Welcome back. I'm busy giggling at everybody who's feeling very, very guilty this morning about the way they're treating their children. No, it's crazy, isn't it? All right, let's talk about another very serious issue. New estimates revealed by Oxfam South Africa's Inequality report entitled An Economy for the 99% show that just 8 men own the same wealth as the poorest half of the world. The report has been released to coincide with the 47th World Economic Forum. It's the annual meeting that takes place today. It starts in Davos, Switzerland. To tell us more, we're joined in studio by Ayabonga Cawe. He's the Economic Justice Program Manager at Oxfam South Africa. Good to have you. Welcome to On In Live.
Thanks for having me on the show.
So Oxfam basically calculated that just 85 people had the same amount of wealth as the bottom half of humanity, and 3 billionaires have the same amount of wealth as the bottom 50% of South Africa. Where do you base the information on?
So the second sort of piece of data is for South Africa, where 3 billionaires own wealth equal to the bottom 50%. And that comes from sort of World Panel income distribution data that is put together by 2 economists on behalf of the World Bank, Christoph Lackner and Branko Milanovic. And then the other sort of data set comes from Credit Suisse, which is data sets taken from sort of national surveys and a range of other data sets and data sources that are then consolidated to provide an aggregate global picture of this issue of inequality.
When we talk about the 3 billionaires, so let's focus on the South African issue. Who are these billionaires you're referring to?
So one of the things that we've done is to actually take a look at some of the data on shareholdings that is being released by the JSE. And if we were to look at that data, the 3 billionaires are Christoph Wiese, who runs Brait SE, Ivan Glassenberg from Glencore, and the third one is Stephen Saad from Aspen Pharmaceuticals.
So they don't necessarily always come up as the wealthiest men in South Africa. There's lots of other guys that could have been used in this particular survey and used as a comparison. Why them? Why have they been singled out?
Look, certainly, if you use the data set that has been used by the Business Times in their rich list, which only includes shareholdings. So it doesn't include sort of unlisted private wealth. It doesn't include sort of land holdings. It doesn't include any non-financial assets. So certainly there are limitations with that data set. However, I think it's still instructive that at an aggregate picture, it's still very alarming and disheartening to see that 3 billionaires at the top of our income distribution actually own wealth that's equal to the bottom 50%. But also, if we look at the income share of the top 10% compared to that of the bottom 10% over a long period of time, what we see is for the bottom 10% is that they've actually seen a decline in their income share. And actually for the top 10%, you've seen a significant rise in that income share over time. Now, what does that tell us? That tells us that the picture of inequality since 1993, and if we look at the period between 1993 and 2011, has actually become a lot worse, not only in South Africa, but across the globe. And therefore, the report really looks at some of the policy questions that have actually caused this inequality, but also proposes a different kind of economy, which is something that we are calling a human economy, which is able to prioritize not the 1%, as the status quo sort of follows, but actually to prioritize the interests and the aspirations of the 99%, which is the majority of all of us, me and you and a range of other people.
Because, across the globe, 7 out of 10 people live in a country that has seen a rise in inequality. I think that's very much so what you're saying in these last 30 years. South Africa, where do we rank up? how are we looking? We are seeing an increasing middle class. We can't deny it. I do understand that there's a big gap, though, still. But, are we better off, or are we one of the worst countries?
Well, South Africa is certainly in that category of one of the worst countries when it comes to inequality. I think if you look at by all the measures, even if you look at just the income measure through the Gini, you can already see that we probably rank up high. However, I think if you look at sort of a lot of the countries in that statistic that you mentioned, the 7 out of 10 countries, it's clear that even intra-class inequality has become a lot greater. So even if you look at the rich list, the difference between the person who's number 1 and who's number 3 on the list is very big. And you compare that to number 1 vis-a-vis number 8, even much bigger. And one of the things that we're seeing, for instance, from many of the economists that come from the University of Cambridge, such as Gabriel Palmer, is that there's a key rise in inequality within the middle class. So you're seeing a lot of people coming into that category of the middle class. However, if you look at that as a class on the aggregate, you're seeing sort of great disparities in wealth and in income acquisition within classes.
I mean, just finally, obviously, I mean, this comes with the timing of Davos. The meeting is taking place today. All these global leaders are meeting. And there's this goal that's been set to reduce or end extreme poverty by 2030. I almost feel cynical saying that, because that's 13 years away, and what you're telling me is that inequality is growing and that poverty, extreme poverty, is getting worse. Views on this, Oxfam? What are you saying?
Look, certainly one of the things that we're saying is that it's not enough to have these big sort of ambitious aims, such as the sort of Sustainable Development Goals or even the MDGs, when governments and corporations, through their strategies, are not willing to actually commit to some of these things. And so we're really proposing a sort of more humane economy that places at the center public provision of essential services and utilities, but also the importance of recalibrating how we measure the economy. It's not enough to just look at GDP growth. It's not enough to really sort of speak of fair compensation without factoring in, for instance, the role of women in the sort of social reproduction of society and even of the labor force in a capitalist society like the one we live in. So I think it's really important to really sort of take stock of where we are now and take a step back and say, how do we recalibrate how we measure society from an economic perspective, with the intention of actually saying, let's not target just output growth and production, but let's actually target other more holistic measures that factor in the issues of the 99%.
Listen, very interesting, and I know we can look a lot deeper into it. So I urge you to get onto the website, oxfam.org.za.
Yeah.
Is it not Oxfam SA, or is it just Oxfam?
So it's Oxfam South Africa, but we call it OZA.
Okay.
So ZA.
Right.
And the website is www.oxfam.org.za.
Excellent. There you have it. So oxfam.org.za, you can go there, read this report for yourself, and see what Oxfam are going to be putting forward at this particular meeting in Davos, Switzerland. Thanks very much for joining us here on the program. Ayabonga Cawe is the Economic Justice Program Manager for Oxfam SA. Have a wonderful day, everybody.